Admiral Zeftar of the Celestial Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the sensor displays with growing unease. For 3,000 years, the Outer Rim had buzzed with the constant chatter of mining operations, trade convoys, and patrol vessels. Now 14 star systems had gone completely dark in the span of a single solar cycle. "Status report," Zeftar commanded, his scaled hands gripping the command rail. His species, the Vorthak, had ruled this sector of the galaxy for millennia. They were apex predators, 7 feet tall, with razor-sharp intelligence and reflexes. "To match, sir." Communications Officer Veles responded, her voice tight with concern. The last transmission from the Kepler mining colony was a standard progress report. Then, nothing. Same pattern across all affected systems. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Zeftar's tactical mind raced through possibilities. Pirates didn't work this efficiently. The machine intelligences of the core worlds were bound by ancient treaties, and the energy readings. They were unlike anything in their databases. "Admiral," the sensor technician called out, his voice cracking. "We're detecting massive gravitational disturbances at the edge of the Terminus Nebula. Something big is moving in there." Zeftar turned toward the main viewport. The Terminus Nebula stretched across the horizon like a wall of purple and gold gas, beautiful and impenetrable. For 50,000 years, it had been a natural barrier. Nothing had ever emerged from its depths. Until now. "Sir," the communications officer nearly shouted, "we're receiving a transmission. It's in standard galactic, but the linguistic patterns are archaic. Very archaic." "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled to life and a voice emerged. From the static, calm, measured, and unmistakably alien in its cadence despite speaking their language. "To all civilizations currently occupying territories formerly claimed by the human colonial expansion, you have 7 standard days to withdraw to pre-expansion boundaries. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. We have returned." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zeftar felt his blood run cold. Humans. The mythical species that had supposedly ruled half the galaxy before vanishing into the void 50 millennia ago. Every schoolchild learned about them in history classes, the mysterious precursors who had built impossible megastructures and then simply disappeared. But myths didn't announce their return with such clinical precision. "Get me a direct line to the Galactic Council," Zeftar ordered. "Priority Alpha, and begin full fleet mobilization." As his crew scrambled to comply, Zeftar stared into the nebula. Somewhere in those swirling clouds, humanity had been waiting, building, planning, and now they wanted their galaxy back. Chapter 2. Echoes of Empire. 3 days after the transmission, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session aboard the massive orbital station known as Unity's Heart. Representatives from 12 major civilizations gathered in the Grand Chamber, their voices creating a cacophony of alarm and disbelief. Counselor, Tis of the Silicon Confederacy was the first to break through the chaos. Her crystalline form chimed like wind bells as she spoke. "The archaeological evidence has always suggested human presence throughout this galaxy. Their ruins dot countless worlds. But active returns? Impossible." "Impossible," scoffed Regent Kozlov of the Bear Clans, his massive ursine frame intimidating even in the zero-gravity chamber. "Tell that to the 14 colonies that have gone, silent. Tell that to the energy signatures our deep space monitors are detecting." High Priest Anubis of the Canine Hegemony raised his staff, commanding attention. His species had evolved from Earth's wolves, though they had forgotten their origin, world long ago. The ancient texts speak of humans as the builders. They created the quantum gates. They established the first interstellar trade routes. If they truly have returned, then we're all in serious trouble, finished General Vraktoth of the Warrior. Cast. The reptilian soldier had spent centuries conquering worlds for the Dominion. Fear was not an emotion he was familiar with, but uncertainty. That was gnawing at his composure. Counselor Thys accessed her internal databases, projecting holographic data into the chamber's center. According to our historical records, humans possessed technology that defied current scientific understanding. They could manipulate space-time itself. Their ships traveled between galaxies as easily as we travel between systems. Propaganda and legend, dismissed Representative Kutel of the hive minds. The insectoid's compound eyes reflected the holographic display as dozens of her sister selves analyzed the data simultaneously. No species simply vanishes from the EI galaxy. They died out. Natural extinction. Then explain this, Admiral Zeftar interjected, transmitting sensor data from his fleet's position at the nebula's edge. The holographic display shifted to show gravitational readings that made no sense according to known physics. 3 massive objects, each approximately the size of a small moon, have emerged from the Terminus Nebula, Zeftar continued. They're not ships as we understand them. The energy output suggests they're actually inhabited worlds, mobile planets. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Mobile planets were theoretical constructs requiring technology so advanced that most species couldn't even comprehend the engineering involved. How many? Regent Kozlov asked grimly. 3 that we can detect, but our sensors can't penetrate the nebula itself. There could be dozens more. High Priest Anubis stood, his ceremonial robes flowing in the artificial gravity. The prophecies of my people speak of the quiet return, when the builders would emerge from the void to reclaim what was lost. We thought they were metaphors. Religious? Nonsense, snapped Kutel, but her confidence was wavering. Is it? Counselor Thys challenged. Every major civilization in this galaxy has legends about humans. Every archaeological survey finds evidence of their presence. What if they didn't disappear? What if they simply withdrew? General Vraktoth leaned forward, his predatory instincts sharp. Withdrew to where? And more importantly, why have they returned now? Before anyone could answer, the chamber's communication system activated. The same calm, measured voice from the original transmission filled the space. Esteemed representatives of the current galactic order, we see that you have convened to discuss our return. This is prudent. We wish to avoid unnecessary conflict, but we will not negotiate our right to reclaim what was ours. You have 4 days remaining to withdraw from disputed territories. After that point, we will begin planetary reclamation procedures. The transmission paused, and when it resumed, the voice carried a subtle note of something that might have been sadness. We have watched your civilizations grow and flourish. We are pleased by your progress, but the galaxy has forgotten its history, and history has consequences. We suggest you remember quickly. The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. Finally, Regent Kozlov spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. 4 days to evacuate territories that house billions of beings. Territories that some of our species have occupied for thousands of years. It's impossible, Kutel stated flatly. Even if we wanted to comply, the logistics alone. Then we fight, General Vraktoth declared, standing to his full imposing height. The warrior caste has never surrendered territory to threats. With what? Admiral Zeftar asked. If they can move planets, what hope do our fleets have? Counselor Thys's crystalline form dimmed as she processed countless scenarios. There may be another option. What if we tried to communicate? To understand what they actually want? They've made their demands clear, Anubis observed. Withdrawal from territories they claim as theirs. But which territories exactly? Thys pressed. The transmission mentioned, formerly claimed by the human colonial expansion. Do we even know the boundaries of their ancient empire? The question hung in the air, like a death sentence. In 50,000 years of galactic civilization, no one had bothered to map the full extent of human territory. Their ruins were everywhere, suggesting an empire of unprecedented scope. As the council devolved into heated argument, none of them noticed the small probe that had materialized in the chamber's upper reaches. It observed silently for several minutes before vanishing as mysteriously as it had appeared. Somewhere in the depths of space, humanity was watching, learning, and preparing for the next phase of their return. Chapter 3. The Weight of History, Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent her entire career studying dead civilizations. As the Terran Archive's chief xenoarchaeologist, she had excavated ruins on 100 worlds, pieced together fragments of lost cultures, and written definitive texts on the rise and fall of galactic empires. She had never expected to become part of one. The observation deck of the archive ship, Remembrance, offered a perfect view of the Terminus Nebula, where 3 of humanity's arc worlds hung in space like sleeping giants. Elena pressed her palm against the transparent aluminum window, marveling at the sight. "Beautiful, aren't they?" asked a voice behind her. Elena turned to see Admiral Chen Wei, the military commander of their particular arc world. At 230 years old, Chen was young by current human standards, but his eyes held the weight of centuries. "I still can't believe we're really doing this," Elena said. "After 50,000 years of self-imposed exile, we're announcing our presence with ultimatums and threats." "Not threats," Chen corrected gently. "Statements of fact. The galaxy forgot. We existed, that was intentional, but they also forgot that this was our home first." Elena gestured toward the distant stars. "Those civilizations out there, they've built entire cultures on worlds we once called home. They have families, histories, entire generations who know no other life. As did we, when we were forced to abandon everything," Chen replied, his voice carrying old pain. "The difference is we chose exile to prevent a war that would have consumed the galaxy. They chose expansion into territories they knew were not empty. The weight of that history settled between them." Elena had access to the complete archives, the real story of humanity's departure from the galactic stage. It wasn't the noble choice that current human leadership portrayed it as. "Admiral," Elena said carefully, "the records show that we weren't exactly innocent in the conflicts that led to our exile." Chen nodded slowly. "No, we weren't. Human colonial expansion was aggressive, sometimes brutal. We claimed the right to any world we could terraform, regardless of who might have been there first. We built an empire on the assumption that might made right. Then why are we repeating those mistakes? Are we?" Chen turned to face her fully. "We've given them time to withdraw. We've identified only systems that were originally human colonies. We're not demanding surrender or tribute. We're asking for what was always ours." Elena accessed her neural interface, calling up historical data. According to the archive, at the height of our expansion, humanity claimed direct control over 14,000 star systems and had colonial interests in another 30,000. Are we planning to reclaim all of that? Of course not. Chen's response was immediate. The current plan calls for re-establishing sovereignty over roughly 3,000 systems, our core worlds and essential strategic points. The rest we're willing to negotiate. Negotiate with whom? The Galactic Council doesn't speak for every species in the galaxy. Chen smiled grimly. No, they don't. Which is why we're starting with the Council. If they agree to our terms and facilitate peaceful transitions, the process becomes much simpler. And if they refuse, the silence that followed was answer enough. Elena walked to another viewing port, this one showing the interior of their arc world. Vast cities stretched across artificial continents, their lights twinkling like stars. Billions of humans called this mobile world home, along with representative populations from dozens of other species that had joined humanity during their long exile. "Admiral, what happened to the other arc worlds? Our long-range sensors show only 3 here, but the records indicate that 17 were built." Chen's expression darkened. Some were lost to deep space hazards during the journey. Others chose different paths. The New Horizon and Stellar Dreams elected to continue beyond this galaxy entirely. They're seeking new homes in Andromeda, and the others? The Defiance and Last Stand believed that 50,000 years was long enough. They wanted to return immediately and reclaim everything through force. The Council of Arc Worlds voted against that approach. Elena felt a chill. What did they do? They're approximately 6 months behind us. When they arrive, they won't be interested in negotiation or measured responses. They'll demand total human restoration, or they'll initiate what they call the Great Reclamation. The implications were staggering. Elena accessed more historical files, finding references to human military capabilities that seemed almost fictional. Stellar engineering on a massive scale. Weapons that could destabilize entire star systems. Defensive technologies that had once made human worlds essentially invincible. Admiral, if the other Ark worlds arrive and find that we've failed to reach an accommodation with the current galactic powers, then the galaxy will burn, Chen finished quietly. Which is why we need to succeed. The civilizations out there think they're dealing with returning conquerors. In reality, we're their only hope for avoiding a war that will destroy everything they've built. Elena stared at the data scrolling across her interface. Billions of sapient beings across thousands of worlds, all unaware that their fate hung. In the balance of negotiations they didn't even know were taking place. How long do we have? The other Ark worlds are moving at maximum sustainable velocity, accounting for their last known position and trajectory. 5 months, 2 weeks, 3 days. Elena closed her eyes, calculating rapidly. That's not enough. Time for orderly evacuations of the disputed territories, even if every species agreed immediately. No, Chen agreed. It's not. Which means we need to change the nature of the negotiation. How? By showing them what they're really dealing with. Tomorrow we're going to demonstrate why humanity once ruled half the galaxy, and why we're being generous by asking for only a fraction of it back. As Elena prepared to ask what kind of demonstration he meant, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the observation deck in red as the ship's AI announced, "All personnel to stations. Incoming vessels detected. Classification, hostile." Through the viewing port, Elena could see distant flashes of light. Weapons fire, moving rapidly toward their position. "It appears," Admiral Chen said with grim satisfaction, "that someone has decided not to wait for our demonstration." By Imakar, Chapter 4. The Demonstration. The attack came from 3 directions simultaneously. A coordinated strike designed to test human defenses and, if possible, eliminate the mysterious Ark worlds before they could act further. Admiral Zeftar commanded the Dominion's portion of the Joint Fleet, 200 of their most advanced warships, including the flagship Stellar Conquest. The Silicon Confederacy had contributed their AI-controlled battle platforms, while the Warrior caste supplied heavy assault vessels bristling with weapons designed to crack planetary defenses. It was the largest military force assembled in over 1,000 years. "Target the Central Ark world," Zeftar commanded. "Concentrated fire on what appears to be their command structure. If we can disable their leadership—" "Sir," interrupted his tactical officer. "Their defensive systems are activating." Zeftar watched the main display as energy patterns unlike anything in their databases began manifesting around the human vessels. The Ark worlds, each the size of small moons, seemed to shimmer and bend light around them. "What am I looking at?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. Energy signatures are off the scale. And sir, they're not moving to defensive positions. That was wrong. Any rational commander would pull their major assets back, using smaller, faster ships to engage the attackers. Instead, the 3 massive Ark worlds were moving forward, directly toward the incoming fleet. "All ships, maintain formation," Zeftar ordered. "Continue attack pattern Alpha 7. The combined fleet unleashed everything they had. Particle beams that could vaporize asteroids, quantum torpedoes capable of destabilizing matter at the subatomic level, and gravitational weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. The weapons struck the human defense fields and, simply, stopped. Massive energies that should have devastated entire fleets were absorbed, dissipated, or redirected harmlessly into space. "Impossible," whispered General Vraktoth from his command ship. "Nothing can absorb that level of firepower." "Sir," Zeftar's communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the humans." "Put it through." The voice that emerged was different from the previous communications, younger with an edge of authority that commanded immediate attention. "Attacking vessels. This is Admiral Chen Wei of the Terran Ark World Remembrance. You have fired on our position without provocation or declaration of war. This constitutes an act of aggression under galactic law. You have 30 seconds to withdraw before we respond. General Vraktoth's snarl carried clearly over the comm system. Human arrogance. You return after 50,000 years and expect us to bow before your threats? Continue the attack. All ships, full assault. The combined fleet intensified their bombardment, but the results remained the same. The human defenses held effortlessly. 30 seconds elapsed. Chen's voice announced calmly, demonstration commencing. What happened next would be remembered for millennia. The rightmost arc world began to change. Its surface, which had appeared to be covered in cities and forests, revealed itself to be something else entirely. Massive sections retracted like flower petals, revealing the true nature of the construct. It wasn't a mobile world. It was a weapon. A weapon the size of a planet. Energy began building at its core. Not the familiar signatures of conventional weapons, but something that made space itself shiver. Reality bent around the construction, creating visual distortions that hurt to look at directly. All ships emergency withdraw, Zeftar shouted, but his words were lost in the chaos of his fleet's panicked attempts to retreat. The weapon fired. It didn't release energy in any conventional sense. Instead, it seemed to reach across space and gently touch a single ship, one of the warrior-cast heavy cruisers positioned at the edge of the attack formation. The ship simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, not blown apart. One moment it was there, the next it was not. No debris, no energy signature, no trace that it had ever existed except for the confused communications of nearby vessels asking where it had gone. What did you do? General Vraktoth's voice had lost all of its aggressive bluster. We removed it, Chen replied matter-of-factly. Relocated it to an uninhabited system approximately 47 light-years from here. The crew is unharmed, but they'll need rescue. I suggest you dispatch a recovery fleet. The implications crash down on every commander in the attacking force simultaneously. If humans could relocate entire ships instantly across interstellar distances, then no defense was possible, no strategic position was secure, and no fleet could ever truly engage them on equal terms. This is what we built during our exile, Chen continued. 50,000 years of focused development, free from the need to engage in petty territorial conflicts. We solved problems that your civilizations never even attempted to address. Another ship vanished, this time one of the Silicon Confederacy's AI platforms. It reappeared seconds later, but upside down and with its weapon systems clearly disabled. We could relocate your entire fleet to the galactic rim if we chose, Chen said. We could move your homeworlds to different systems. We could rearrange the positions of entire star systems if necessary. But we prefer not to disrupt the natural order unless absolutely required. Admiral Zeftar stared at his sensor displays, in growing horror. The readings were impossible to interpret, but the message was clear. Humanity hadn't just returned with advanced technology. They had transcended the very limitations that confined other species. What do you want? He asked, his voice barely steady. What we have always wanted, to go home. Your governments have 4 days to reach a reasonable accommodation with our territorial requirements. If they cannot, then we will begin relocating populations ourselves. It will be more efficient, but considerably less pleasant for those involved. You're talking about moving billions of beings. Yes, we have done it before. Chen's voice carried a note of old sadness. When we left this galaxy, we took with us every human colony, every allied species, every population that chose to follow us into exile. 17 arc worlds, carrying the entirety of human civilization and its friends into the void. Moving a few billion non-humans to appropriate relocation sites would be significantly less challenging. The attacking fleet had stopped firing entirely. Ships hung in space, their crews trying to process the revelation that they were facing opponents who could casually manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. However, Chen continued, we would prefer cooperation to coercion. Your species have built remarkable civilizations in our absence. We would rather accommodate your needs than simply override them. General Vraktoth found his voice. And if we refuse, if we choose to fight rather than abandon our homes? The pause that followed lasted exactly 10 seconds. When Chen spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then you will lose, but more importantly, in approximately 5 months, 3 more Ark worlds will arrive. Their commanders are considerably less interested in accommodation than we are. They believe that 50,000 years of exile was punishment enough for the sins of our ancestors. They intend to reclaim the entire former human colonial expansion, regardless of current occupancy. That's 14,000 star systems, Zeftar protested. 44,000 by their calculations. The Defiance and Last Stand believe that any territory ever surveyed by human ships constitutes legitimate claim area. They also believe that any species that has benefited from human-built infrastructure, quantum gates, hyperlane stabilizers, terraforming improvements, owes reparations to be paid in territory and resources. The silence that followed was deafening. So you see, Chen concluded, we are not your enemies. We are your only hope of avoiding a war that will consume this entire galaxy. Work with us, and we can reach an accommodation that allows your civilizations to continue flourishing. Refuse, and in 5 months you'll be dealing with humans who view compromise as a sign of weakness. With that, the transmission ended. The human Ark worlds began moving away from the stunned fleet, their impossible weapons powering down. But the message was clear. Humanity had returned, and they were being generous. For now. Epilogue: The Price of Peace. 6 months later, the Galactic Council met in emergency session for the 37th time since humanity's return. The Great Chamber of Unity's heart bore the scars of recent renovations, expansions necessary to accommodate the new reality of galactic politics. Councillor Thys of the Silicon Confederacy called the session to order, her crystalline form reflecting the light of representatives from 17 different species. The chamber was larger now, with new sections added to accommodate delegations from groups that had never before merited council representation, including humanity. Ambassador Sarah, Chen, Admiral Chen Wei's younger sister, sat at a newly constructed console designed for the human delegation. At 180 years old, she was considered young by human standards, but her diplomatic skills had proven essential in the complex negotiations that had prevented galactic war. The final territorial agreements have been ratified by all major powers, Councillor Thys announced. Humanity has accepted sovereignty over 2,847 star systems, representing approximately 6% of the currently inhabited galaxy. Murmurs of relief rippled through the chamber. The number was far less than the historical human colonial expansion, but still represented the largest single territorial transfer in galactic history. The evacuation procedures have been completed. Ahead of schedule, continued Regent Kozlov of the Bear Clans. Human relocation technology has enabled the transfer of populations with minimal disruption to their social structures. That was diplomatic language for what had actually been an extraordinary display of capability. Entire cities had been carefully removed from disputed worlds and relocated to new planets prepared specifically for each species' needs. Ecosystems had been replicated with perfect precision. In some cases, the relocated populations found their new homes superior to their original worlds. The integration of human technology into the galactic infrastructure continues smoothly, reported High Priest Anubis. The new quantum gate network has reduced travel times by an average of 73%. General Vraktoth, whose warrior culture had adapted surprisingly well to the new reality, added his own report. Human military advisors have proven educational. Our understanding of strategic possibilities has expanded considerably. Ambassador Chen stood to address the council. On behalf of the Terran Ark worlds, I want to thank all species for their cooperation during this transition period. The integration of our peoples and technologies has proceeded better than our most optimistic projections. And the other Ark worlds? Asked Cattell of the Hive Minds. The ones that your brother warned us about? Sarah's expression grew somber. The Defiance and Last Stand arrived 2 months ago. They were disappointed by our accommodations with the current galactic order. However, after extensive discussions and a demonstration of the new territorial arrangements, they have agreed to abide by the negotiated agreements. What she didn't mention was the 3-day standoff that had nearly resulted in civil war between human factions. The extremist Ark worlds had demanded complete restoration of the historical human empire, only backing down when faced with united opposition from both the moderate human factions and the established galactic powers. There have been some adjustments to their crews, Sarah continued diplomatically. Many have chosen to integrate with our existing colonies or to join the exploration missions to Andromeda. The chamber remained quiet, understanding the implications. The humans who had wanted total reconquest had been given a choice: accept the negotiated peace or leave the galaxy entirely. Most had chosen integration, but several thousand had departed for the void between galaxies, still seeking a place where they could build a purely human civilization. What about the long-term future? Asked Admiral Zeftar, who had been promoted to the Council after his role in the First Contact crisis. These territorial arrangements work for now, but what happens as populations grow? As resources become scarce? Sarah smiled, and for a moment, her expression carried the same mysterious confidence that had characterized all human communications. That's the beauty of our technology, Admiral. Scarcity is a choice, not an inevitability. We can create new star systems. We can build worlds to exact specifications. We can literally expand the habitable space in this galaxy by orders of magnitude. She gestured toward the chamber's main display, which showed a real-time map of the galaxy. Human systems were marked in blue, other civilizations in various colors. This isn't about dividing up a fixed pie, Sarah explained. It's about making the pie bigger, much bigger. To what end? Pressed Counselor Thys. What is humanity's ultimate goal? Sarah's answer would be quoted in history text for millennia to come. To prove that intelligence and cooperation can overcome any challenge. For 50,000 years we developed in isolation, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Now, we want to share that knowledge, to see what we can accomplish together. She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives of species that had once been mortal enemies of each other. The galaxy is vast, but it's not infinite. Beyond our local cluster lie other galaxies, other challenges, other opportunities. Someday, if we work together, we might spread intelligence and life to every corner of the universe. And if we refuse this cooperation? Asked General Vraktoth, though his tone suggested genuine curiosity rather than hostility. Then you refuse, Sarah replied simply. We won't force it, but the invitation will always remain open. Intelligence that isolates itself eventually stagnates. Intelligence that cooperates becomes something greater than the sum of its parts. As the session concluded and representatives began departing for their various worlds, Admiral Zeftar approached the human ambassador. A question, if I may, he said quietly. Your people could have reclaimed this entire galaxy by force. The demonstration with the fleet made that clear. Why didn't you? Sarah considered the question carefully before answering. Because 50,000 years ago we tried ruling through strength alone. It led to wars that nearly destroyed everything we had built. We learned that true power isn't the ability to dominate others. It's the ability to make domination unnecessary. She gestured toward the main display, where ships from dozens of species now moved freely through the expanded quantum gate network. This is what we really wanted to come home to. Not an empire built on conquest, but a civilization built on cooperation. It took us 50,000 years to learn the difference. As Zeftar left the chamber, he reflected on the profound changes that had swept through the galaxy in just 6 months. Species that had been suspicious neighbors were now close allies. Technologies that had seemed impossible were becoming commonplace. And at the center of it all were the humans, the mysterious species that had once ruled through strength and had returned preaching cooperation. Whether that cooperation would last remained to be seen. But for the first time in galactic history, the future seemed to hold infinite possibilities. And in the depths of space, the human Ark worlds continued their slow dance around ancient stars, their inhabitants working to build something that had never existed before. A truly united galaxy, where intelligence itself was the highest value and the greatest adventure lay not in conquest, but in discovery. The return was complete. The real work was just beginning. The end.